Aha! I think I was on mute. Thanks for telling me that you couldn't hear me. I haven't said anything interesting yet, so that's the good news, because I was waiting for 3 o'clock to come around before I get started. If you can hear me now, would you just give me a thumbs up or let me know, just so I can be certain. I think it's working, but I want to be sure. Great. Thanks for that confirmation. All right. So where I'm sitting, my clock says 3 o'clock. So let's get started. Now, before I start today, I'll do a recap about what the project is, and then I have a quick announcement to make. So for anybody who's joining for the first time, this is my open source project. It's called Kivik. It is a website for it. Kivik, Kivik.io is a website, and it's a PouchDB and CouchDB library for Go. So it's sort of an SDK for Go. And I'm adding a feature to it. I'm adding, so first, it has pluggable backends, so you can talk to CouchDB or to an in-memory driver and so on and so forth. I'm writing a SQLite-based driver to primarily be used for testing purposes. That's the feature I'm adding. And I've been working on this. This is my 3rd week into it. I've also been working on it between live streams, so I was working on it last night. So I'm not picking up exactly where I left off last week if you are joining again, but I'm picking up somewhere after that point because I've spent a few days working on it in the meantime. And I'm using TDD, of course, to do this. I use TDD almost all the time. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate TDD on most of the client work I do because it's private repositories. So the best I can do is to demonstrate it on an open source project. So that's kind of the goal today, and in general with these live streams, is just show you how I do my work and invite questions. If you have questions, if I do something confusing, or even if I make a mistake, which happens frequently, call it out in chat. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I am streaming on 2 platforms, on YouTube and LinkedIn, and so if you see me responding to a chat message you don't see on your platform, it's probably because it's from the other platform. You should be able to see it on the screen, but it doesn't stay up forever. But you can see on the screen here up in the corner where I'm waving with a cursor around, you can see there's a hey there from Martin. Hi Martin, on LinkedIn. So what else? Is there any other business to go over? I don't think so. Don't see anything embarrassing, I guess, in chat because this is recorded and it will be available. Don't share private pictures of your babies or whatever. I don't know if you can share pictures anyway, but so I have an announcement to make on the topic of TDD on these projects. Some of you, especially if you're on LinkedIn, may already follow Dennis Chahuk and I can't remember his last name right now. Adrian, can't remember his last name. I have to look it up, which I will do right now. They do actually 2 weekly live streams. They're totally kicking my butt when it comes to this sort of stuff. Adrian Stanek is his last name. So the 2 of them, they do 2 weekly live streams on LinkedIn. I think they're on YouTube and maybe Twitch. I'm not sure. And this month they've been talking about TDD a lot. And they've been doing some live coding sessions, but mostly like katas. So a little bit different focus than what I'm doing. They're going to join me next week at this time slot, and we're going to do pair programming with TDD at the same time. So if pair programming is interesting to you or a novel concept, you're not really sure how it should work, be sure to join next week at this same time slot on Monday when I'll be doing the same project, but I'll have a partner with me, pair programming with me. And we encourage audience participation too, so you can sort of, I mean, it's a little bit of a different dynamic when you're chatting and we're talking, but you can join us to do some pair programming or mob programming in a sense on this open source project. So I'd love to have you join for that also if you're available. Let's get started. So let me see here. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to start, but that's okay because that's kind of how it is in the real world, right? I come to work on Monday. I don't know exactly where I was on Friday, and I get started. So what I've done is I've opened up one of my test files, and I'm looking for to-dos. There's a to-do. I'm not sure if that's relevant. I think I've already done that. Yeah, I don't actually know what that is about. I have a couple other to-dos and other files. I just want to find a to-do that reminds me where I was, and then I can go from there. If I don't find one, then I'll just pick an endpoint, or not an endpoint really, but a method that needs to be implemented, and go. So one thing about implementing CouchDB or anything like this is that the API is already pretty well defined. I just need to implement it. Here's some to-dos. Which is nice, I guess, in a sense. I mean, it's simple. I don't have to think about the API design. I just have to think about the implementation. This API is fairly complex, though. Like, there's a lot of nuance to it. So, there's still plenty of thinking to be done. It's not just rote hacking. There's actually some design that does need to go into it. I have to decide if I'm going to attack these right now or do something simpler or something else. So I started last night and maybe the night before, I started adding the @since capability. And I have tests here to add 2 new use cases. Actually, I will go ahead and add these. I think that these are already covered by the current code, but I'm not sure. What @since does is it returns attachments since a certain revision. And so I've added a couple test cases about that already, or I guess maybe just one. But these are a couple corner cases I want to test for. So let's get started. Let's do that. Let me copy this test case, and I'll modify it. Now I want to test with an invalid rev. So I'm just going to copy this, or actually I'll cut it and paste that into the new one. So in my setup function, I create a document with an attachment. Then I add a new attachment. I don't care about that for this particular test. I don't need 2 attachments. Because what I want to test for is whether or not this does the right thing when I pass an invalid rev to the, let me do that, invalid. And what it should do is return a stub. So basically, when a document has attachments on it, it always returns at minimum a stub, which includes the content type, a hash, a digest, its size, and this flag called stub true. So what I want to do is see what happens if I tell it, and then normally the @since I can say, give me all the attachments that have changed since a particular revision. And this is used during synchronization between different database servers. But what I want to do now is test what happens when I tell it to tell me all the attachments since an attachment or since a revision that doesn't exist. And actually, I said invalid, so it should actually not be even a valid one. Let's make up something nonsense here. This is an invalid revision. So it's like not even syntactically correct. So actually what I expect this to do, I think, is to return a 400 error. But let me test that. Let me see what CouchDB does. Because I'm not 100% sure if that's how CouchDB behaves in that case. So let's find out. So let me docker compose start my test CouchDB instances. I have several different versions of CouchDB that run here, as you can see. Well, it has to download some stuff. Sorry about the delay there. The last time I was doing this was on my laptop, where I have all those Docker images already cached, but I haven't done it on this machine for a while. I'm glad I have a fast internet connection. My wife and I were just watching an episode of the X-Files last night, where they were talking about blazing fast T3. And I was doing some math and realizing that the connection we have to our house is like 20 times faster than a T3, which back in 1996 or whatever was really fast. Okay, looks like we're just about done. Waiting for one more to start. Sorry, I'm eating some cheesecake as I wait. I don't know why that was taking a while, but I don't care about it. I'm going to start a new tab so I can just make progress while that can fail or not as it wants. We zoom in here. So CouchDB has a REST API, so I'm going to do some queries against it. my test CatchDB instances in Docker use admin abc123 as the user and password. And I think version 3.3 is running on port 6007. So I start there, and then I want to create a database first. Let's call it DB. Yeah, I created a database. Now I want to create a document. Let's call it foo. And I'll just give it a simple foo : bar database object. Okay. Now I'm going to query that. Curl get, and this should just return the document. Okay, so we have the document ID foo, rev, blah, and bar. Now I'm going to pass the ats. Oh, I need to create an attachment first, don't I? Or else this test isn't going to really mean anything yet. So I can create an attachment by passing, let's call it foo.text. I need to give it rev. Whenever you update an existing document, you have to tell it the previous revision, otherwise it doesn't know, otherwise it won't allow you to do it, because you need to make sure you're using the most recent version. Content type should be, I don't know, let's give it content type is text plain. Alright, now I can fetch the document again, and now we see there's an attachment there. And as I was mentioning, it always includes something. In this case, it's stub. So if I pass attachments equals true, if I could spell correctly, then it includes, it includes the content, but it's gzipping it. So let me give it a different header so it doesn't do it like that. Easier to read. There, so now it includes the content base 64 encoded. So the difference between attachments equals true and @since is @since only includes the attachment since a certain revision. And I want to give it an invalid one. Now I need to, one second. I need to pass it a JSON array. It needs to look like this. Say not valid. But I need to URL encode this. I think it's %5. I don't remember. Let me look it up. I want to URL encode. Surely there's a tool that will just let me do this. Yeah, here we go. Let's use this. I want to encode those two characters. Invalid. Probably hard to see. I'm going to zoom in. Encode. And what do I get? I get this thing. Okay, let's copy this. I don't think the quote characters need to be encoded, but that's okay. It should be fine. Exactly what I expected. Invalid rev format. Okay. So it does give a 400. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a 400. Let me look at include the headers. Whoops. Oh, okay, so I think. Yes, 400 and invalid rev format. So that's what I want my test to do. So it's not going to return a document. It's going to return an error. Want error, invalid rev format, and want status. Okay, there's my test. So let me see this. Invalid rev format is a little bit more specific than invalid rev. It distinguishes from a rev that doesn't exist versus one that's the wrong format. All right, let's run this test, and it definitely should fail. Actually, I already saw that it failed right here in the IDE, but I'm going to run it on the console just to be a little more explicit. Oh, wrong directory. All right, there, the test is failing. So it's actually returning something. It didn't detect that the rev was the wrong format. So let's open up the correct file. It would be code get.go. That's where the code that handles this is, well, where it lives. Okay, so I need to find where it's looking at since. So here's where it assigns that to a variable. Problem is I'm not doing any validation on that. I pass it straight in here, and then I just use it as is, which isn't really ideal. I just pass it to an SQL query. At least it's safe. I mean, there's no option for SQL injection because it's passed as a parameterized query. Did I say that right? But I need to validate that it's correct or not in the correct format. So where's the best place to do that? I suppose this is the best place to do that. I need to just loop through each value in this since slice and see if it's correct. And I already have a function that parses revs, so this should be pretty easy. Let's give it a shot here. I don't care about I just want to do. Copilot's telling me exactly what I want, I think. No, I don't think it's going to give the error I expect, but it should give an error. Yeah. And I think that's fine. I'm not super picky about my error messages exactly matching the ones from CouchDB, and in some cases the ones from CouchDB are kind of obtuse, really not very clear. So I don't mind if I give a different error message, it's a little more clear. I'm not sure if this one is more clear. Like, it's not obvious why it would be trying to parse this as an int. I know why. It's because it splits it on the dash, takes the first part and tries to parse that as an int, and that's what's happening here. I'm going to go ahead and go with this though. Like, I don't know what I would do to make it much more obvious. So I'm going to update the test to expect this particular string and call it a day. All right, so now that test is passing. Yeah, I mean, I can always come back later and make this error message more clear if I want to, but I'm not really worried about that right now. So I'm gonna call that good. Maybe I can commit. Actually, first let me check out a branch. Let's call this more at since. Continuing on that. Let me add. So there's the validation and there's the test for it. All right, now there's one more test I want to add related to at since, and I don't think this is broken. I think it already works, but I want to test to be certain. And this is where it's a valid rev format, but it's not a rev that actually exists. So I'm going to once again copy this test, and then I guess I'll just overwrite this little thing I did here, and then let's just copy this, I'll cut it, and rename this test to that string. And then once again, I don't need 2 attachments. 1 is enough for this test. And the thing I want here is I want it to look like a valid format rev, which starts with a number, dash, and then some characters. So it needs to look like a valid rev, but it not be one that exists. And so that's what's happening here. And it's going to return a document with a single attachment. It should be a stub. And actually, this rev is going to be 1 dash something. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll find out. It's like an MD5 sum or something. We'll see if that's the right one magically. Let's run the test and see what happens. The test passed. Let me change this to something else just to see if they fail. Yeah, they do. So Copilot was smart enough to figure out the right hash because it's the same one. I'm using the same document many times. I just copied and pasted. It didn't really have the smarts to figure that out. So I expected that test to pass, and it does. The reason I expected that to pass is because the code that uses that is this here. It calls this really long SQL query, and I'm not going to go through it all today. I spent a few hours on this yesterday building this, but it should already have the right logic, and I was 98% sure that it did, but it's good to have a test to be sure. All right, now these other two to-dos I'm not going to do right now. attachment encoding is kind of an advanced feature. That's the ability to compress attachments in local storage. I don't really care about that right now. I mean, it's something I want later. It's nice to have, but it doesn't affect the usability of the app. And since I intend to use this for mostly testing, I don't really care if my test documents are compressed with gzip or not. But it's something I might add later. So I'm going to leave this for now. Then OpenRevs is another feature that needs to be added, but that's done through a different endpoint. And that's another thing that's a little bit more advanced. I'll do that later. What I want to do now, and probably for the rest of this call, is start to implement a few other methods that aren't implemented yet. And if I go over to, I think it's db.go, we'll see I have a bunch of placeholder methods here that aren't implemented yet. All docs, create doc, delete, put attachment, get attachment, delete attachment. So that I could kind of start anywhere on these and start implementing one of them. Before I do that, I'm going to move this delete method to its own file. I started with get and put in the same file too. Those are the two methods I implemented first. But they got so long, I decided to split them in their own file. I'm going to do the same thing with get, or with delete. I'm going to move that to its own file. And so that'll just be a quick refactor. And that will leave this db.go kind of as a placeholder for new functionality. And maybe probably for each method, I'll put it in a new file. Or maybe I'll leave some of the smaller ones in there. So I'll do that. Now I need to copy this header. That needs to be the same in every file. The Apache license likes that. Okay, so I moved the delete function. Now I want to move the delete tests. Open DB test. Test DB delete. Okay. The delete function and the tests are fairly small relative to get and put. There's just not that much logic to be done there. But it's still, I feel like, kind of nice to have them separate files for now. That's not something I usually do. I usually don't put one method per file. But it feels like, I don't know, if you look at get here, it's 427 lines. It's not a single method, like there's a couple related things here, helper functions and stuff. But it's all related, very close related to that get method. So delete's much smaller, 150, about half the size, a little less than half the size, but still might as well follow the pattern. All right. The bigger reason I feel like I like having delete in its own file in this particular case is it makes the db.go a little bit cleaner, and it's more obvious what still needs to be done. I don't have to go searching for my sort of to-do list. I think I'll start with all docs. That should be fairly straightforward, I think. Let me pull up the documentation for it. It does have a certain number of special cases, actually, now that I think about it, but let's have a look anyway. It's a very common function to use, so it's like one of the, as far as being useful, it's right at the top of the list of what's most useful to do. All docs. The thing is that all docs is a built-in view, and views have a ton of options. That's not the right. Here, this is what I want. View endpoint. So it has 3 required parameters: the database, the design doc, and the view. And then it has all these options: conflicts, descending, end key, and an alternative for end key. Just, all of these options. Let's get started. I'm not going to implement all of these features today, but I can at least do the default behavior. That should be pretty straightforward. And then we'll see where we get. You know, the nice thing about having a predefined specification is I can just sort of copy this list of parameters down as to-do tests, and then add those tests as we go along. So let me create a file called alldocs. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a file called view or views. I think I'll call it views. Since alldocs is a special case of a view, I'm still going to implement it as a method directly called alldocs, but I'm certain that in the future, when I support general views, I will be refactoring that and taking a lot of the alldocs logic into a generalized function. But I'm not thinking about that right now, really, except for the fact that I want it to be a file called views instead of alldocs. So we're going to create views.go and viewstest.go. Copy this header, both files. And actually, I forgot something in the file I just did in the delete test. For the test, there's a special bit I need to add. I'll copy from here, another test file. I have these build tags to not run these tests in Gopher.js, which is a compiler to convert from Go to JavaScript, which most of my driver supports, but this one doesn't because SQLite depends on capabilities that aren't supported by Gopher.js. So I just want to disable that. Let me add that to my previous commit. All right, now I'll do the same. Now I'll create my new file for views, and I'm going to just move alldocs into the views file. And then I can close this and this and this. Now I'm going to write my test. So func test td all docs. I am going to open up one of my other tests just as a sort of a quick reminder of what I was doing. I was setting these up. They all follow a similar sort of pattern here. So I call to.parallel and then I create my test. Create a slice of anonymous structs. And name is the name of the test. We'll see how that's used in a moment. I'm definitely going to need a setup function. So setup is just a function I can specify that that lets me do arbitrary setup on a per test basis. And then I'm going to need options. I need a database name. We'll call it DB. And then I need some way to declare my expected result. I'll worry about that in a moment. I'm going to start with the error case because I'm going to start by my first test is going to be an error case, right? And then I'll add. In fact, I'm even going to get rid of setup for now. I'm going to do just the minimum I need for my first test, and then I'll expand that as I need to. I'm going to call this TT out of desire to be similar. And so I don't know if I want that yet. I want it to.parallel. Okay, and then the more important part to copy is some of the setup at the bottom here when I actually run the test. So here, some of this could probably be extended to some boilerplate. I mean, I've already done some boilerplate. When I started, this function was inline, and now it's been separated out. Let's do that. So I don't have setup yet. I may add that. I will certainly will add that, but for now I want this. Options matter here. And then I'm going to have rows error equals. It shouldn't be mock context. Sometimes Copilot is stupid, and this is one of those times. Let me see, what arguments does this take? Yeah, it just takes the context and options, and it returns rows and error. So we're good there. And actually, I don't care about rows yet because my first test is only going to test the error case. So let's copy this and this. The first bit here checks the error matches. Test.error matches is a function that compares the all right. So test.error matches compares that this string matches this error, and if the error is null, it compares against an empty string. And then this checks that the error contains the expected status. This is where I can put 400 or 404 or whatever. Whoa. Getting an emergency alert on my phone. I think it's off now. All right. So the first test I'm going to do is for a non-existent database, which should return a not found. Name, DB not found. DB not found. Sure, whatever. It doesn't matter since none of the databases are going to be found in this test. And I want, no, it's HTTP. Status not found. And the error should probably be not found. Test failed, as expected, because the function doesn't do anything. It just returns nil. So now I get to start filling out this function to do the thing, to do not found. Now the simplest way to do that is, which is what we're supposed to do if we do TDD, right? That should make the test pass. And they do. Test pass with 83.3% coverage. All right. One test down. What's the next one? I suppose the next case would be the database is found but has no database, no documents in it. You can call the database empty, I don't care. And in this case, I don't want an error, but I do need to do some setup, so I need to add that setup function. And I need to make the setup function called if tt.setup is not equal nil. Whoops. Then we call it. Okay, now let's define that setup function. I don't want any mock things here. I don't know what that thinks it's doing there. I want to db dot create. Okay, actually, come to think of it, this already creates a database for me called test. So I don't need a separate setup function yet, actually, because it's already happened by the boilerplate. What I need to do instead is just tell it to use test. And now I'm getting not found when I don't expect that, because that's what the whole thing does. All it does is do not found, right? So let's, now this test really isn't complete yet, but we have enough to make some progress, because I haven't told it what return value I actually expect, but I'll get there. So let's make this not do not found. So what I want to do now is I want to do a query against the particular table that I care about to get all documents. And it should return nothing in this particular case. So I'm going to do error equals no, I don't want to create a table. That's not what I want at all. What I do want is, so, and this shouldn't be exact, this should be query. Select called ID. Let me open this my schema to see what that looks like. This is the table I want. It's called ID. Select ID. This is going to have to get a lot more sophisticated, but for now, I'm going to do the simple one. That's one thing I like about TDD is it helps me focus on the particular task at hand. And the task at hand right now is to not return not found. Actually, I want to do fnt as printf. This should be from %1q. I'm using %1q, %2q, etc. to these, so I can easily reuse the same argument if I need to. In this case, the argument is d.name. Is that right? It doesn't like that. That's just called name. Fair enough. d.name, I guess, would be kind of redundant. This is going to be good enough, right? For now. This obviously is not complete. But if there are no documents, this query will return nothing, which is what I want to happen right now. Close. Or next. That's actually probably fine. So the value I want to return is a driver.rows, which is an interface. So I need to implement that interface. I'll get there. For now, all I care about is, did I get any results? So let me do, we do this, and we'll say found equals true. And we'll continue, we'll iterate through all the results, even though there's going to be 0 for now. This is not a complete version, right? And then if error following equal rows, not error. So if we get an error during iteration, I want to return that. If not, then if not found, then I would return this not found thing. Otherwise, return nil, nil. Our test should pass now, I think. No, they're not passing. I don't know why. We'll find out. But I'm not sure why. No docs in DB should iterate through here and not return anything. This is another reason, by the way, to keep your to follow the rule in TDD of do the minimum necessary to make your test pass. If I had gone ahead and thought about all the different iterations I need to do and reading the rows and so on, and then it failed, it would be much harder for me to debug that. So by following the discipline, following the rules, and doing the minimum, I have a very, very simple function here to understand now, to figure out why I'm getting not found when I didn't expect to. I know why. I do know why now. The reason is because I'm checking for the wrong error. Not found is, this is executing because I found 0 rows. But I don't want to return a not found error in that case. I want to return success with 0 documents in that case. I want to return not found for the case where the database doesn't exist, which is a different scenario. And actually, I'm going to validate it. That's what happens with CouchDB. I think it is, but I want to validate that. So I'm going to specify non-existent database, blah, blah, blah. And that says database does not exist. Okay, so actually I want to take this error, and that's what I want. I first want to say is that database does not exist, not just not found. Now, how do we get that to happen? I'm not sure. So this needs to, I don't know, what does SQLite do if you try to query database? It should give an error, right? Why isn't that error already happening? I would have expected an error to happen here. Let's see what SQLite does. See, I would expect something like this to happen right here. I think I know why that's not happening though. Let me think. Oh, you know what? I do know why this is happening. It's because this database argument I just created isn't actually being used anywhere. I'm not passing it anywhere. That goes somewhere else. So actually, this test is actually invalid. Although it's not technically it's not completely invalid. So here's the thing: the all docs method doesn't take a DB argument. It doesn't take that. So I was just mistaken when I did that. I'm going to delete that. However, there is still a case where I could potentially call all docs on a non-existent database. I'm going to add that to my to-do list. I like to keep that at the end of my list here. The only way this could actually happen, here's the thing: when you call, let me walk you through what's happening here in this new DB function. It calls client.db on test, and this actually, you know, I'm not sure if it does make sure it does exist. Actually, I don't think it does. But anyway, I'm not going to test it right now, but I'm going to leave it to do. But the thing is, the way the test is running right now, maybe I can test it right now. I think I can. I'm kind of confusing myself. I'm probably confusing you even worse. Maybe not that. So I need the setup function though, because I need the setup function to delete the database that it just created. Well, I can't do that yet because I haven't created the function to delete the database. I don't think. I'll leave it in my to-do list. I'm going to delete this test. I'll leave that in my to-do list. I'm going to get there. For now, I want to make this test return. I don't want to return not found. So actually, this whole not found thing is kind of nonsensical. I want it to return a driver.rows with no rows in it. So the next step then is to update my test to tell it what I want it to return. So I think let me look at this driver.rows. I don't think this EOQ thing is actually true anymore. Maybe it is. So I'm going to drag this over here to the side so I can look at it while I'm looking here. So basically what I want to do is what I want, and I want it to be a slice of things. Could do driver.row. That might make sense. That wouldn't give me a way to check all these things, but it might make sense. No, let's try it. I may change my mind later, but that's the nice thing about software. It's easy and cheap to change your mind. So want, and that's what I want. I want to return driver.row that's nothing, that has no elements in it. Now I need to update my logic to read the results and put them in this thing. Actually, you know, well, yeah, we'll get there. This isn't actually what I want. What I want, I'm going to create a custom type here. Let me show you what driver.row looks like. like this. There's all these things. I don't need to duplicate all this, but what I want is something else. Something similar, but not exactly the same. So what I want is type, let's call it a row result. Struct, we're going to have ID, rev, I'm probably going to add things to it later, but for now I don't need key or value or doc or attachments. I do want error. But I don't want it to be an error. I want it to be, I want it to be a string. Because errors are hard to compare because they're an interface, and there can be different types. But I want to compare that I get the expected error string. So this is what I want to compare against. So I'm going to change that here and here. And no doubt this will change, but it's a simpler version of this for now. And then what I'm going to do here is rows deal. If error does not equal nil, then early return. Then I'm going to iterate over this rows thing, right? No, I want to iterate over rows. Let's see if that's enough to. Okay, I want to call this dot. No, I don't want. No, I guess I do want that actually. Yes. Okay. Or what's it going to have me do here? No, that should be. Yeah. Let's switch here actually. Switch. Yeah, I think that's what I want. Case io.eof. Break. That means we're at the end. Case io.eoq. Continue. So that's driver.eoq. Don't worry about what that means. It's a kind of esoteric thing. So I think that's all the error cases. io.eof means we're done. I did mean to break out of the outer loop, yes, so I need to put a label here. Loop. EOQ means enter the query and we continue again. If there's no error, we continue. If there is an error that's not one of those, then we have a fatal error. Okay, that seems all right. Well, yeah, okay, that's fine. This error is going to panic in some cases, so I don't want to do that. I want to do something like this. Var, whoops, our message string row dot. All right, that should be fine. And then we get to the end here, and then I want to do comparison. D to cmp.diff. want, which is got. D is blank. Then, all right. Tests are failing. Why are they failing? I kind of expected them to succeed. Cannot call non-function row.error. Oh. Yeah. This is not calling a function. Let's do it like this. Now what do we have? Nil pointer dereference. Where is that happening? At V1. Okay, because this is a new value. The problem, where is this happening? Line 82, it's just there. Is rows nil? Oh, rows is nil. That's why, because I'm returning nil here. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So now I need to implement my my rows thing. So let me pull up the definition of rows again over here. So I need to implement something that implements these methods, right? So let's create type rows struct. And then we're going to do var driver.rows equals nil. That's going to fail right now. This is basically a compile time assertion that this type implements this interface, which it doesn't right now. That's why these word squigglies are showing up, because I haven't implemented any of these methods yet. Now, I don't actually want to iterate over this, do I? I don't want any of that there. Rather, I want this to contain that rows. I want to insert that into it. Delete that and say rows, which is, what is the type of this? Let me see. It's an SQL.rows. Simple enough. There we go. So let's return rows, rows. Hope we have enough rows in there. All right, now this is squiggly also because I still haven't completely implemented. Wait, what? Is not a type? Oh, okay, I have a problem here. I have a variable called rows, and I'm trying to reference this, but it's shadowed by that. So I need to change one of the names here. Let me think. What do I want to call this? And I could just call this one result or something. That's not really ideal either. I can call this one. Those is a good name. I'll call this results for now. Always easy to change these later. Names are easy to change, so don't spend too much time on it. All right, now it's failing for the reason I expected, because it doesn't implement the interface yet. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Func rows next driver.row error. So here is where we want to, if not next, then return. Here is where we call next on the iterator, right? Or on the SQL iterator. And then yeah, okay. This is good enough for now. So it's woefully incomplete, but like I said earlier, it's nice. That's a feature of TDD actually. I'm just scanning in the ID. I'm not getting the document or anything else. So that's fine for right now. Yeah, that's fine for right now. Okay. Actually, I don't want this to be out of yet. I want to do yeah. So if there is an error iterating, then that will be evident here, and then I want to return that. Otherwise, IO.UF. Okay, so next is done. What's next? Close. And in this case, I just call close on the underlying method. Good enough. These other functions, I'm just going to have return empty values for now. But I'm going to add to-do comments to add tests for those, right? Total rows, I don't want negative, I want 0. All right, so let's head back over here, move this to this side, and I'm going to add some to-dos. All right, so there's to-dos to test all of those. Yep. The truth is, actually, all of these tests don't really belong in this particular test function. I don't know if that matters though. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. I'll figure that out later. I'm jumping ahead of myself, which is again one reason for TDD is to help you keep focused. I'm allowing myself to lose focus. So let's focus on the problem at hand, which is to make this test not return an error. Tests are still failing. What's happening? I'm getting unexpected rows. So I'm not getting an error, but now I'm getting I expected an empty result and I got nil. So if I just change this to nil, I think it will pass. Now it passes. Okay. And I honestly don't care about that detail, whether I'm getting an empty slice or a nil slice. I don't care about that for this. So we're fine. Tests are passing. Let's stop. Just so I can commit. All right, now let's add a document to our database. Single doc. There we go. Now we need some setup because I need to create a document. Let's create a document called. Actually, I'm going to move this over to the main window and get rid of the side by side so I can see more. So it's creating a document called foo that has. Let's simplify this. String. And we're going to just set cat meow. That's the document, right? And this should be mock.nil option. All right. Why is this failing? Okay, because it returns two things. Self returns a rev. Okay, I'm going to reformat this slightly, be a little more readable. And I'm going to have this print out the rev. I actually, you know what? I decided I want to do this right now. I have an idea to refactor these tests to make this a little bit better. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do it later. I don't want to get distracted. So now I need want. And here is where we get to do the interesting part. This is the part that's going to fail, right? So first off, I want ID foo. Rev, I don't know what the revision is going to be. That's what this is going to tell me. Actually, I don't need that now. But I don't know what this rev is going to be, but we'll find out. And what else? I want the doc. So let's put that there. And I think that's all I care about right now. Actually, let me look at the documentation. Let's see what it returns by default. It returns ID key value. But in the case of all docs, it's a little bit special. Here's return. Okay, actually, I don't want the doc yet, do I? But I do want value. Let me change that. I'm not sure how I want this value to come out, but I'm going to do a string for now. I can always change it later. When in doubt, use the simple thing. I don't actually know what the value is going to be. I'll just put a placeholder there. That way I know the test will fail, and I can see the diff output and make a change. The tests are failing, as you can see down here at the bottom. I'm going to run them here, where I can see the output better. All right, so I wanted this result, and I got nil. A little bit interesting. I'm not sure why I got nil. I would have expected to get a single response with an ID, but I didn't. So it's nice that my code is simple and makes debugging easier. Let's see what's happening here. I'm going to just throw some panics in here. Let's see if this is being called. I'm sure it is, but let's just see. Yep, that's called. Let's try down here. Okay, that one's not being called. So apparently we're immediately hitting the end. It strikes me as strange. We're never getting here. Why in the world is that the case? This is executing fine. Select ID from. Okay, I'm going to change this a little bit here. For debugging purpose. This is probably a good practice anyway. Got the query just to make sure. There's a quick sanity check there. I'm going to tell it to run just the specific test I care about. A tiny bit faster. I'm getting select ID from test. That's what I expected. Question is, why is it returning nothing? Next is called once, and that first time it returns no more rows. Let me make sure that this setup thing is working. Just to be sure, let's do this. It's returning nothing apparently. Is that true? Maybe it's not even being executed? I don't think it's even being executed. Let me see if I did that. Aha! I forgot to actually tell it to run the test thing. The setup thing. That would explain it. That's exactly what I was expecting earlier. Alright. I see a comment here. I'm wondering if I missed a question. Let me see, because I see someone. It looks like someone responding to someone else. Let me pull up the chat here. Okay, I see the question here. I'm not sure why I didn't get this in my chat window, but I see it now. Doesn't TDD make product delivery slow? No, it speeds it up drastically. Because I get immediate feedback on my problems, and so I can, yeah. I mean, you're watching me do it. I do something wrong, and I get feedback within minutes, and then I can fix it. Without TDD, I can make the same mistake and then go potentially hours or maybe even days or weeks before I discovered it. Until someone's reviewing my code or I'm testing it manually or something like that. So no, TDD definitely speeds you up. However, it takes practice. It's just like any other skill. It won't speed you up at first. But once you become proficient at it, it definitely can speed you up. Also, there are times when TDD is not the right tool for the job. And in those cases, it probably would not speed you up. So, you need to learn to do it well and when to apply it. But in the right circumstances, it definitely speeds you up. And then I see someone responding to that question. It's a common misconception. It's not always about how fast you can deliver your product, but also how good your product is. That's also true. I mean, in principle, TDD should allow you to deliver a better product, even if it does take longer. Although the main reason I like TDD is because it gives me the confidence to move quickly. So I like the speed aspect of it. That's not the only thing I like about it. There are many things I like about it. As I've mentioned already today, it helps you focus on one thing at a time. I mean, you've seen me. I'm talking through and I'm thinking about, I need to do this and that and that. I can put those down in a sort of a to-do list, as you've seen here, and then I can continue focusing on the one thing I'm trying to accomplish right now. And so that level of focus is also nice. It also helps you go faster, I think, because you don't have to try to keep too many things in your head at once. Continuing the comment, I saw many junior developers close stories faster than senior peers on the team, but usually they caused also more bugs or produced code that needed refactoring, which then again became more expensive in the long term. This was just an example. Same is, of course, valid for seniors or those mythical 10x rockstar engineers. TDD or tests in general is a great way to avoid the mentioned scenario. A couple other interesting questions here. I believe using mockgen for mocking the repository layer database would be easy. It might be easy, but it makes for really crappy code. Mocks are generally an anti-pattern, whether they're generated or not, because you end up testing the wrong things when you use mocks most of the time. There are rare cases where I use mocks. The main time when I use a mock, in fact, Kivik ships the mock library that I wrote. So I'm not completely saying never use mocks. I wrote one. I wrote a mock library. The main time to use a mock library is when you need to talk to a slow or unreliable service, and you need to do that during testing. And databases are the prime example of that. APIs, other APIs can be the case too. But don't be fooled into thinking that testing against a mock is sufficient. You still need to test against the real thing because your mock is never going to be 100% the same. So a mock, testing against mocks does not replace other testing. It supplements it. If you only write tests with mocks, you're probably doing it wrong. Because you're testing the wrong thing. You're testing your mock implementation. You're testing how well your mock implements your thing rather than your own code. So there is a place for mocks. It's rare. Like 5% of my tests ever have used mocks. In the example we're using today, I'm actually testing against SQLite directly because SQLite has the ability to run in memory. So I don't need a mock here at all in this case. I'm just testing against the actual database. So that's another thing. If I were doing this against Postgres or MySQL or something like that, I would do two things. I would do at least two things. Sometimes I probably wouldn't use a mock very often, but what I would do is I would write tests that interact with a live version of Postgres or MySQL, and that run only when requested, because those are going to be slow. I have to start a Docker container that runs MySQL or Postgres. I have to run those tests. I have to make sure that the transactions are done correctly because they're modifying data. So there's a certain amount of complexity involved in that. That makes it slow and flaky. Then I would put all of that in one package, and then I'd have another package that, and then that package would expose an API to my application, and I would test that through stubs and dummies, which is a lighter version. Maybe that's what you mean by mocking, but mocking has a very specific meaning within testing. I use stubs and fakes and dummies far more often than I use mocks. So I would use stubs to test that API layer, not full-fledged mocks. If I've confused you or anybody else about what I just said there about mocks versus dummies and stuff, let me know in chat and I can elaborate more on that. But in general, mocks are heavily overused. They should be used rarely, and they should be used in addition to other tests, not instead of other tests. And a couple other questions here, I think. John, would you work for a company that doesn't want to use TDD? That is, I'm not sure how useful my answer is going to be to you. I do TDD. Whether the rest of the company wants to or not, I generally do TDD when it's appropriate and when it's possible. It's not always possible, especially on some legacy code bases. If a company ever told me I couldn't do TDD, I would never want to work for them in the first place. I'm also in a situation that I work independently for multiple clients at the same time. I don't have traditional, I'm not an employee of a single company, and I tend to work with clients that like the way I work. So it would be a little bit of a strange scenario for me to work in a company that didn't want to do TDD. Why would they hire me if they don't want me to do TDD or want me to teach TDD? I certainly have worked at companies that didn't like TDD or even almost forbade it, and I hated it. I worked at one company, I won't name the company, but I worked at one fairly large company that didn't like automated testing at all, TDD or otherwise, and had a pretty strong stand against it, and I was miserable there. I don't know if that answers your question, but the main answer to the question is because I work independently and I kind of get to pick and choose my clients. No, not really. I wouldn't work for a company that doesn't do TDD, but not necessarily for the same reasons that would be applicable to somebody in a more traditional employment situation. I think I'm through chat now. I'm sorry it took me a while to answer some of those questions because they didn't show up in my chat window for some reason, but I found them. So yeah, let's get back to the code. What was I doing? I think I was about to watch these tests fail. Whoops, what did I do? And it is failing as expected. I expected it to return revision and a value, and it did not. And that's because I'm not querying for those. So let's do that. This is rev and rev. It's actually the revision is stored as two fields in the database, the integer part and the string part. We need to fetch this separately. In this case, I don't know if I'll stick with this, but I'm going to concatenate them in the database query because it makes the rest simpler. I may change that in the future, but simplest code to make the thing pass is where I want to go. And now here, I need to scan rev and rev value. It doesn't have something called data. Is that right? I'll get to that in a second. That's squiggly. I'm pretty sure I have something called data. Let me see what it's called. It's called doc. Okay. Fair enough. Except actually, doc isn't what I want. That's not what I want. I want something that goes into value, but what is that thing that goes into value? That's the question. And that's not something that's stored directly in the database. It is this. So I need to generate that. It's not going to be coming from here. So let me start with this. This should make the revision come through. All right, the revision is coming through now. And I can see what it is. And I can trust that this is the correct one. It's basically the MD5 sum of the contents. And I'll just put that in, copy and paste that into my test. Now this value thing needs to be figured out. And what I want it to look like, so I can figure that out. I can figure out what I want it to look like. I want it to look like this. Value, blah, 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 blah. And one thing I don't know is how it should be formatted, but I guess I can decide. I'm going to take out white space. I don't know if that's the way CouchDB does it, or if the documentation just shows it that way to be friendly. But I am hereby deciding, at least for the moment, that there will be no white space. Let me copy the actual revision there. So this is what I want. It's not what I'm getting, but at least now I know what the target is, and so now I'll know when I hit it. This is another reason why TDD makes it faster, because I know exactly when I hit my target and I can stop and then move on to the next thing. So let's change this to row.value equals. This is going to be really ugly. I don't want to do it like that. Here's what I want to do. I want to say row.value. I'm going to ignore the error for now because I know that no error is possible for what I'm about to type. This should be interface, not string. I need to put an object here. It's going to be map string. Yeah, I think that's right. Except okay, it's not quite right. It's almost right. Let me comment this out. I need to check this first. If error is not equal, if error colon equals, it's not equal to return an error. Okay. Otherwise, I can set this to row dot rep. No, not rows, just row dot rep. Okay. Now this can be simplified to a string. And then return nil. Does that work? It's pulling in the wrong JSON. What? I don't want this. I don't know. I have no idea what that is. I want JSON for the standard library. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? Value of type byte is IO read. IO reader. What are you talking about? Did I call the wrong thing here? Am I being silly? No. Value. Why does it? Okay. I know what's going on here. So I want to do this. Var buff bytes dot buffer. JSON dot new encoder buff. And there. Blah. Okay. Then row dot value equals buff. That should do it. All right, now I think I need to have this thing. Yeah, this is not setting rev yet, so I need to do that. Or value, not value is not happening yet. Yeah, the git link. So someone asked, how will I see your code after the live session? I want to check how you are writing unit tests in a clean manner. Can you share a link? The easiest way to find it is go to kivik.io, and there's a GitHub link in the top right corner. You can click on that and find the link. Let me just share that. Oh, it's already open in a tab here. So kivik.io, and click on GitHub. You can find the repo right here. Anybody's welcome to create pull requests if you want, file some issues if you want, or just read the code. You know, all that stuff is cool. All right, so now I need to put value equals something. The problem is that this value is stored as an IO reader, so I need to read it into something. So let's do value one error colon equals IO dot read all dot value. If error does not equal nil, t dot fatal. Should be exceedingly rare that I ever get an error there. Now we have byte value that we put in there. Let's see how that works. We're getting somewhere, but now we have. What's it complaining about here? Is this new line? It's missing a curly brace. Did I not type it correctly here? I did not. So this should actually be curly. Yeah, okay. I see what I did wrong. I missed the curly brace here, and is that the only one I missed? No, there should be two. I'm missing two curly braces. And a new line. Why is there a new line? That's unusual. Why is there a new line? Why is there a new line? I don't understand that. I mean, it's still valid JSON. I just don't know why there's a new line there. Oh, it's at the end. I thought it was in the middle of the value. I do know why there's a new line there. It's because JSON dot new encoder encode always puts a new line. And the reason for that is so that you can have a stream of multiple JSON objects. But I'll just do that to make the test pass. It's kind of annoying. And I may use a different approach in the future, like actually decode the JSON or something. But for now, this gets it working. And now we still have a problem over here. The linter thinks that I'm not checking the error on this results. I am checking that error. I'm just checking it in a different function. So I'm going to silence the linter. There we go. All right, my tests are passing. Oh, I still have this debugging output to print this query. Let's get rid of that. All right. All right, so I'm going to add some lists of things, a list of things that I want to test for, some of which I know are going to be broken. The most obvious one to me, probably not to you, since you don't know how CatchDB works, but the most obvious one to me is that as the query is written, it returns. Well, there's actually several here. Let me just make a list. The one I was going to say is that it returns all revisions of the document, not just the most current one. So only doc revision. So what I'll do to test that, I'll create two versions of to create the document and update it, and then I will see that it returns 2 copies when it should just return 1, and then I'll make the changes to fix that. I should spell winning correctly. The order is indeterministic. Return values, and then let's and then let's go through the documentation here and add support for the things we care about. I'm gonna document all these things. I'm not gonna fix all of them right away, but I'm gonna just go through the list here and add them to to-do list. Like this. Options. I want to conflicts. It's true. Whoops. What happened? Next is descending. And that orders, that changes, that reverses the order, just like DESC does in SQL. End key and end key are synonymous, but we need to support both. End key doc ID. I don't know, those are also synonymous. I don't know why we have 2 versions of that. Group. Group level. I don't know what all these do. I have none. I don't remember. Include docs is a really important one. Attachments. At encoding info. I talked about that earlier at the very beginning of the call on the get method, that I wouldn't implement that yet. So I won't for this one either, but I'm just being complete and putting all of them here. Inclusive and keys, limit, reduce, skip, sorted, stable, stale. A lot of things here. And some of these have multiple confusing options. I'll look at each of as I implement them, I'll look at each one. Right now I just want to get them down so I don't forget, that's all. Doc. Oops, can't spell. ID. Start doc ID. Update. Update sequence, and I think we're there. Let me see if there's any other accept header. I don't think I care about that right now, if ever. I don't think there's a meaningful difference between application JSON and text plain here. For some of the endpoints, there's a multi-part response capability, but not for this one. All right, so there's a long to-do list of things. I'm going to tackle include docs first, because that's the most useful one of all of these. And all that does is update. So by default, we return just some metadata about the document, its ID, its revision, and its value, which for the all docs endpoint is basically a repeat of the key. Not very useful. If we add if we say include docs, then we get the docs themselves, the document data, which you don't always want to do that, but it's very common. So basically, I'm going to copy this function here. Everything about it is perfectly legit except for the response, because I want the response to include a doc. And the doc should say cat meow. Well, it should say a little bit more than that, actually. It should say ID who rev blah Get rid of this white space. Cat meow. Somehow, I think Copilot knows about CatchDB because it seems to have a lot of knowledge about some of this stuff, but it got that pretty much right. I think even the revision is right. Yeah. But doc doesn't yet exist in this thing, so let's make it exist there. Now I need to do the same logic, same sort of logic down here as I did for value, since doc, but only if, so first I'm going to do var doc if row.doc is not equal to nil, because that can be nil. In fact, it is nil in the previous example. So only if row.doc is not nil do I want to read it. And then I set doc equal that value. Now the test's going to fail, I hope. Yeah, they do fail because I haven't actually made the query return the document yet. So that's next. So I have a failing test. Perfect. Let's make it pass. And that should be pretty straightforward. I need to add to the query. I need to add doc, which I started to before I realized I was getting ahead of myself. And then I need to add it here as well. Now, so this one, recall I had to sort of build the value synthetically. The doc I actually want to read from there. So let's do at doc, but I need to convert it into an IO reader. So I'm not reading it straight into row.doc. I'm going to create a variable. Doc. I think it could be byte. I don't think it matters whether it's byte or string. I'll use byte because it might be slightly more performant. And then say, actually, it needs to be a pointer to. Well, no. Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just realized that what I'm about to do is going to make my other test fail, but we'll get there. Bytes.new reader doc. So my new test should pass now, I think. Let's see. It not passed perfectly. So I'm getting okay. It's not working perfectly, but it's at least returning the doc. The problem is that the old one is failing because now it's returning the doc when it shouldn't. So I need to be a little more clever about this. So I'm going to put some logic in here. If actually, hang on. So I need to read that include docs thing, right? So let's do that. Opt include. Okay, actually, first, I'm jumping ahead of myself again. I need to do something with these options. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details of how these options work, but I'm going to copy the logic that does work, and then that'll be pretty straightforward then. So copy this, get rid of that default value that I don't need. So now my options are in this ops map that I can easily get to. So I'm going to say opt include docs equals. All right. And then I'm going to pass this into the query as an argument. And then I'm going to read that query right here, or that parameter, the argument. I'm going to reformat this to be a little more readable. Now this one doesn't need an alias since it's the same, but just to make it a little more readable, I like to do this sometimes. That way I can align all my column names on the right and then the logic on the left. So what this says is if the argument I pass in, include docs, is true, then return doc. If it's false, return null. All right. Now down here, I need to make this a pointer to something so that the null value does something meaningful. And then if doc does not equal null, no, I've got to panic. All right, let's see what's happening here. Include docs equals true is panicking 168 right here. Why? Oh, because I had this case wrong. Thanks, Copilot. You screwed me up. Right, now I'm still getting nothing here, and I don't know why. Let me check my logic here for the query. $1 doc. No, let me. And then here I scan it into that doc. Let me change this. I expect it to break. It's not doing what I want, what I expected. I expected it to break in a different way. You know what I think I forgot? I think I forgot in my test case to actually pass that argument. That option. I did. I bet that'll make a difference. It does. All right. Now I'm a little confused why I didn't need. Oh, okay. I know why. If I had done a string here, in fact, let me just demonstrate that. This would fail. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I can't pass. Oh no. Let me comment this out for now. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. Because my query occasionally returns null now, I was expecting it to fail, but it only fails for string, not for byte slice, which is fine. It's more convenient for me. All right, so it's working, except that I need to partly synthesize. Excuse me. I need to partly synthesize this because I need to include the ID and the rev, which aren't stored in that database column. Now, for my get method, I have a big thing that does that for me. I think I can just use the same logic. Let me open that up here. Go. Merge something. Func merge. Merge. To merge. How is to merge used? Into doc. Okay. So what I need to do then is do essentially the same thing. So merge into doc is very inefficient right now, but what it does is it takes the doc as retrieved from the database and adds other keys to it. And it does that through JSON marshalling, which I will definitely improve that. I know how to improve it, just haven't taken the time yet. But I want to do that here. So I want to say this only matters if doc does not equal nil, because that's how I know the document was requested. So I'll put that right here. To merge colon equals, and then I can put ID and rev. Those are the only two I care about right now. I will care about others in the future, but for now, that's all I care about. And I don't want to do that yet. I want to do. Let's see how this is called again. Body merge into doc. Doc. I'll just call this doc again. Why not? Do my error checking. No, it doesn't like that. That's fine. I have some variable shadowing going on, but I don't care. I think it works now. Yeah, all right. Now we pass. Now that inserts those two extra fields for me. So my test pass. Let's make a commit. There's all my to-do comments. That's fine. I'm curious, those of you watching, especially if you are under the impression that TDD might make you slower, how do you feel watching me? Do you sense that I'm going slower because I'm using TDD, or do you sense that it's making it more efficient or faster for me? I'm curious what you thought or what you think. All right. I've got about a half hour left, and I have plenty of work to do. It's not like I'm running out of work. Um, my inclination, or I'm considering before my to-do list, considering doing this because that's really without this feature is basically completely worthless. Even though it looks like it's working right now, it will not work if I have two revisions of the same document. The only reason not to work on that right now is that making that work is a lot of SQL magic. I'll be making this query much longer. And it's kind of boring to watch me work on SQL, I think. Maybe I'll get started on it anyway, because it really is the next logical thing to do. Let's get started. And I may not finish in the time remaining, but we'll get started. So I'm going to copy single doc, modify it, multiple revisions. So let's update that document. All right, so we're going to change it from cat meow to cat purr. Thanks, Copilot. That's a great suggestion. Why not? Now I need to set a revision here. So let's do kivik.rev. And I don't know what the revision is, but I can find out because it's the same one as up here. As I think I mentioned, the revision is the MD5 sum of the stuff. So since it's the same document, it should be the same revision. So I'll copy that revision to down here. Oh, I already have it down here too. And now my new revision is going to be 2 dash something. I don't know what it's going to be. And this will be 2 dash xxx. That's what I want. I know that's not what I'm going to get because I'm going to get 2 revisions. But that's what I want. And there's the 2 revisions. I have revision 1 and I have revision 2. But I only want revision 2. So actually solving it in this particular case is actually fairly straightforward. There are other cases where it's not so straightforward, but yeah, for here, I guess I was a little bit prematurely scared about this SQL. It's actually fairly simple here. I need to do group. First, I need to do order by. Order by ID, sure. Rev ID, rev descending. I want the highest one, so I think descending is what I want. So what I want is like the maximum of these combined. I can't remember how I've done that already a few times in this code base. I don't remember how I did that. Look at my get stuff here. So it's different with this get because with get I'm only getting a single document. With all docs I need to get all the documents, so it's a little bit trickier. So if these were combined, it wouldn't be hard because I could just do max. But they're not combined. And even if they were, and I could use max, I wouldn't be able to do that for long because soon I'll get to the logic where that's much more complicated. Maybe I'll use some ChatGPT for this. It's pretty good at this sort of thing. This docs. Let's see if that's enough context for it. Right, window functions with ranking. I don't know if it knows that this is the SQLite. Oops, finger's the wrong place. Will that work with SQLite? All right, it says it will work there. So I'm going to do some testing. So I'm going to create this document, or this table. Which actually means I need to create this one too. That one references this one. Maybe I can skip that for now. Just delete the reference. Don't care about deleted right now either. Yeah, that's good enough for this test. And then insert into docs, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about sequence right now either. Yeah, okay, ID is foo, rev1, rev ID, and doc, yeah, that's fine. And then I want to do a second revision of the same one. Whoops. Foo 2. Come on, put it in. Yeah, 3. Why not? 3 revisions, the same thing. All right, let's run this locally on SQLite. SQLite x.pb column. Let's see. Literally typos here. That one works. That one works. And then my default query is going to return all 3 revisions, and I don't want that. Okay. Let's see what we have over here. Let's just copy this and see what we get. With ranked revisions, okay, select blah, blah, blah. Before I execute it, I want to see what it does. It looks more or less the same. How handy is that? It's pretty much exactly what I want. It doesn't include the right doc. Wait, why is doc empty? Did I forget to create doc in my insert? No, doc is blah. Oh, because $1 is okay. That's why. Because of this. So let me just change this to true. And true. I'm surprised that executed. Why that that $1 I would have expected to cause a syntax error, but it didn't. All right, there we go. All right, let's try this. Let me move this over here. And I'm going to implement that here. So with rank revisions, I don't know if that's the best name, but whatevs. Easy to change later. This thing. Need to add this row number. Partition by ID, order by rev ID descending. That needs to be order by rev descending, rev ID descending, but that should be fine. I don't know if I like this RN. Might be a little more verbose than that. Let's call it row num. Or no, let's call it rank. It's even better. And then close off this subselect. And then we can do this select. Indent. Do that. Don't need a semicolon. I think we're done. Did my test pass now? Let's find out. I think that is exactly what I want. So there's the revision. Let's fill that in. So there's a placeholder value there. Now did I do include docs here? I don't think so. I don't expect it. Oh, I don't have the doc, but I need to fill in the placeholder here. So yeah, perfect. I think we're done. Yay, that was easier than I thought. Thanks, ChatGPT. All right. Now, there's another place where this will fail. I guess I could make it to, let me add the to do here. Deleted doc. So I can delete a document, and as it stands, it will return it, but it shouldn't. So I need to make that change. Also, when you can have a conflicting document. One second, let me update my local chat. Make sure I haven't missed any messages that are important here. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not seeing. I'm seeing chat messages show up on LinkedIn and others show up in my shared chat window and vice versa, but not the same ones in all places. So if I missed your question, I really apologize. It looks like the LinkedIn API is having some sync issues or something. So anyway, the point is that I was trying to make. You can have document conflicts. So you can have if two people try to update the same document essentially at the same time, you can get a conflict, just like you do in Git. So you can have, and then it automatically chooses a winning revision, which is fine. The thing is that you can then delete one revision or another, and I need to make sure that all docs selects the correct one in that case. That may already be in there. Like it may already do the right thing based on the logic I just added with the ordering, but I want to add a test to validate that. Maybe that's what I'll do right now, because I think the logic I just added should be sufficient for that purpose. So let's do that test case. So to create a conflicting document, I need to update this a little bit. Actually that's fine. The second one needs to be done differently. I need to specify the rev here. I'm going to reformat this. I'm going to actually use it to this window and close this window. Save that tab for a little while. I want to be able to see a little better. So I'm going to reformat this a little bit. It's easier to read. I don't need this here anymore. Option. No, actually, I do need an option. I need to pass, but not that option. I need to pass a different option. To pass new edits equals false. Then I need to specify the rev I want here. And this could be arbitrary. I'm actually going to do the same thing up here too, because I want to control which one is the winning rev and which one is the losing rev. So I want to control what the rev is. So let's just do this. So the way the winning rev is determined is just by alphanumeric sort. So in this case, X will win over A if there's a conflict. Now it's up to the user, under normal operation, it's up to the user to decide which one wins and delete the other one. But until that happens, it needs to choose the arbitrary winner, and that is by alphanumeric sorting, whichever one comes last. So that would be this one. So I want this to return 1 -xxx. And it may already do that. It does. Test pass. So that's already handled. That's nifty. I already did that. All right. Let's just add that commit. I'm going to just add that to the previous commit since it's so closely related. All right, now let's do a deleted document and make sure that it gets ignored. Let's come back up here, copy this one. It's a simpler case. Deleted doc. So now I want nothing here. And I'm going to delete this document. There's two ways I could do that. One is I could call the delete function. The other is I could just set the deleted key here. That would be shorter, but I think I'll do the delete function just because I think it's a little more clear. I think the delete function takes options. Oh, actually, I know that it takes a single option. I don't know what that rev is. Let's go look it up. It's up here. There it is. It's rev. Now it should return nothing, and I don't think it will. It's going to fail. Yes, it is returning a document I don't want. Now, actually, I want this to return bad. All right, so let's go update our logic here. I think this is going to be fairly simple. I just need to put, I need to include, this isn't quite as simple as I thought it might be. For this test case, it will be, but there's, just remind it, actually, I'll do that. So that for this particular test case, it's easy. But there's a case where I have a conflict, and I delete the newer, so let's say I have a conflict at revision 2, and then one of those versions has had revision 3 and 4 added, and then deleted, leaving the other conflict as a winner. I need to make sure I select that other one, even though it has a lower revision number. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but I think it makes sense to me. So I'll get there. But I don't want to get sidetracked. So just make a note of that and work on the particular case. And this case is relatively simple to solve. I need to add the deleted column here. I'm going to use spaces so it all lines up correctly. And then here I'm going to say where rank equals 1 and not deleted. I think that will make this test pass. It does, except for the fact that it's returning nil instead of an empty slice, which I don't care about, so I'll just make it match. All right. Return deleted documents in all docs. All right, now let's go back to this conflict scenario, and let's be a little bit more complicated than this. Not much. So all I need to do now is delete one of these revisions, because that will increase the revision number and break the logic, I believe. It doesn't matter which one I delete. I'll delete. Yeah, it doesn't matter. No, I still want it to return 1xxx, but I think it's going to return them wrong. It's going to return whatever 2 dash whatever was created by this conflict. I think that's a bug. Which I'm gonna add a note to that in my delete test case. I don't know what that note was meant to mean there, but losing rev could not conflict. So I think it's a bug that when I delete this rev1 AAA, it's giving a conflict. I could go fix that, but for now I'm going to switch to the other revs. So it doesn't matter for this test. I've already made a comment to do comment. See what happens now. Okay. Now it does what I expected, but not the right thing. Because now that I've deleted one XXX, it should return one AAA, but it's returning nothing. So that's the bug I was trying to trigger. And I found another one in the process. That's a good thing. Now, I have to think about how to do this. I might just be able to say, yeah, I can't just ignore deleted revisions here. I can't just do where not deleted, because then it will just give me the next revision down before the deletion occurred, which is not what I want. So this is where things start to get complicated, because I need to use a different querying technique. I have 5 minutes left in this live stream. I'm not going to get done that quickly. I've solved essentially the same problem already in a couple of other endpoints, but it's not easy to wrap your head around, or at least not for me. Maybe it is for someone else. Yeah, what am I going to do? Not even. I'm trying to think how to even state the problem in my own head even. I want this. Basically, this isn't quite the right grouping anymore. This is going to take a while for me to solve. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to not work on this. I'm going to see if I can solve the delete problem. That might be a quick one. So let's create a test case here. Delete losing rev. Or conflict. I think I can copy the setup from the other test that I just had, since that triggered the problem. This. Then I pass in ID equals foo. Options equals dash AAA. And I want success here. I don't want a failure, but I'm going to get a failure, I believe. What I want then is want rev. I don't know what the rev is going to be, but it's going to be 2 something. All right, let's see this one fail. No, I'm going to run. Now I have 2 failing tests because I've added 2 tests. I'm going to run just the one I care about right now, and try to solve that one. So let me open delete here. So what I do here is I just select. Yeah, okay, this is almost going to be the same problem I have in the other one. I'm just selecting the highest revision and ignoring conflicts. And if that already exists, if it doesn't exist, what is it doing here? Yeah, it's just selecting the highest revision. And if it doesn't match the one requested, it does a conflict. So yeah, that's wrong. But it's not going to be a quick solution. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a commit for both of these. Not that one, this one first. So I've committed those failing tests, and those are great points for me to pick up from when I get back to this, which will probably be later this evening or during the week. So I have 2 test cases. That's one nice thing about TDD also is it serves as a reminder if you leave a broken test, serves as a reminder when you come back to your work the next day or whatever of what you were working on. So that's exactly how I'm going to leave this project for now. We are at time. So thank you for joining me today. Reminder, next week at this time I'll be doing this same project, but with a pair. So we'll be talking it out together instead of just hearing me talk and drone on all the time. You can hear Dennis challenge me and help navigate and so on. So I'll be quite curious to experience that myself, and I'd love to have you join next week when I do the same thing. One other thing, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. If you're not already subscribed, I have a daily mailing list where I talk about Go-related topics. boldlygo.tech/daily. You can subscribe there. I talk about recently I'm doing a series about the Go spec, breaking it down in very easy to understand terms so that you can be a better Go programmer. I hope to see you next week. Thanks for joining.